I've got this one.
Yeah, I was just calling your clerk, Mr. Hanel, so I'm glad you zoomed in. I was trying to figure out where you were.
Okay. There's no seats on here, so just take a seat.
And Mr. Boone, you can hear me okay?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, I can.
That's good. Okay, so this is the case where Mr. Boone, you got charged with a 4-year felony on possession of heroin, and then the OWI, which is the operating under the influence of a combination of both alcohol and drugs, and then also an open container in a vehicle. So 2 misdemeanors, 1 felony. Where are we at this point, Mr. Hanel?
Thank you, Your Honor. I have spoken with Mr. Tarango, kind of behind the scenes here. He's made an offer. I'll let him put it on the record, but I anticipate it's going to be he pleads to a use of heroin, which is a 1-year misdemeanor, and the OWI will dismiss the possession of heroin as well as the open alcohol container in the vehicle.
Okay. And is that your understanding as well, Mr. Tarango?
I'm sorry, Your Honor. I had a hard time hearing you.
That's okay.
The offer that I made was a controlled substance, a use charge, less than 25 grams, and he would also plead to the OWI. In return, I would dismiss the open container.
And that use of a controlled substance less than 25 grams is a 1-year.
Correct, Your Honor.
Okay, so then Mr. Hanel, were you talking with your client, Mr. Boone, about going forward and doing the plea today in district court?
I would
or
like
still
to,
waive it?
I would like to enter the plea today, Your Honor.
Yeah, okay. So Mr. Boone, if you're aware of what's happening, the felony case would be amended and be called a misdemeanor. And the misdemeanor charge is called the use of heroin, which is a 1-year misdemeanor, up to $2,000 fine. Court costs can be on top of that, and you can lose your driving privileges. On a drug-related charge, you can lose your driving privileges from the Secretary of State, where they suspend, restrict, or revoke your license for a period of time. The operating while intoxicated is a misdemeanor. That's up to 93 days in jail, up to $500 fine, court costs on top of that, which does get kind of expensive. 6 points on your license. Again, the Secretary of State can take your license away. They don't do it double. They don't suspend you for both. Well, I mean, they can suspend you for both, but it overlaps, in other words. The suspensions can overlap. But the operating while intoxicated can be a suspension of your driving privileges by the Secretary of State as well. That open container would be completely dismissed, and the possession charge would be completely dismissed. So the felony gets dismissed, and the other misdemeanor gets dismissed. Ultimately, Mr. Boone, the decision has to be yours, not your attorney, Mr. Hanel, not your family, not your friends, not me. It has to be your decision based on whatever the facts were last July, talking July 18th, about 3 months ago. And if you go forward on your own, it's your decision. There's no trial. There's no witnesses that come in. You don't take testimony. You don't testify yourself. You're not presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. If you plead guilty, you give up those rights, including your right to be presumed innocent. If there was something you didn't understand or something you thought was inaccurate, you could appeal. Within 3 weeks, you could appeal to the higher court, which is circuit court, anything that happens at the district court. Any questions you can think of so far, Mr. Boone?
No, Your Honor.
Then if we go back to July 18 and we talk about this area of 14 Mile Road, Myers Lake, northern Kent County, we call it Cortland Township, still part of our jurisdiction. As to the use of this controlled substance that we're talking about, heroin, the misdemeanor, 1-year misdemeanor, how do you want to plead?
Plead guilty.
As to the charge of operating while under the influence, operating while intoxicated, the 93-day misdemeanor, how do you want to plead?
Plead guilty.
So tell me the incident. Were you driving?
I was, Your Honor, yes.
Was anybody with you?
No.
Were you in a car that was familiar to you?
Yes.
Were you driving up in the area by Cortland Township or in Cortland Township by 14 Mile and Myers Lake?
Yes, I was.
Was there a car accident?
Not with another vehicle, no. But
Did
yeah,
your car go off the road so it summoned the police to come to the scene?
yes.
And when you went off the road, were you physically hurt at all?
No, I was not.
Was your car banged up?
Yes, it was.
Was it in a ditch so it made it unable to continue driving?
No.
Just off the road?
I made it off the road, yes. I pulled it.
But it didn't hit like a tree or it didn't hit like a mailbox or
Mailbox, I believe.
mailboxes it did hit?
Yes.
And it disabled your car in some way?
In some way, yes, the radiator hose was
Well, it was damaged at any rate.
damaged, yes.
When did you have contact with the police after the accident?
I believe almost immediately.
Almost immediately?
Yes.
And physically you were not hurt?
No, Your Honor.
Okay. Where had you been prior to that whole thing happening?
With my ex-wife at her place.
And were you at her place as a visit? You're talking?
Yes, as a visit, yeah.
And when you were visiting with your ex-wife, did you drink alcohol?
Afterwards, yes.
Did you have any drugs in your system?
I did, Your
And did you use the drugs at your ex-wife's home?
Honor. Yes,
Okay. And was it heroin?
it was, yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And do you guys have any kids?
We do. There's two
Were the
kids.
kids at the house?
No, they weren't.
And it was just you and your ex-wife?
Yes, Your
When you left, where were you going? What was your destination?
Honor. My home in Muskegon.
And that's on Ellis Road?
Correct.
And when you left, what time, ballpark, would you say it was that you left wherever your ex-wife's place was?
Park, 8:30 p.m.
PM?
Yep.
8:30 at night?
Yes.
Okay. So when you had the accident and the police came almost immediately, do you know who called the police?
I believe, I do not know who called the police now.
Other people, passersby, somebody that saw it, maybe a nearby neighbor?
Possibly, yes.
Okay. But the police came to the scene, and in talking to you, they had you go through some tests. True?
I did not go through any tests. I don't believe I did.
Did you take a breathalyzer at the scene?
Not at the scene, no.
Did you take one at the jail?
At the hospital. I had my blood taken.
So did you go to the hospital to have blood taken from your arm, or did you go to the hospital to be checked out?
I went to the hospital to have blood taken from my arm.
Okay. And you actually had blood taken from your arm, and they could detect that there was heroin in your blood, correct?
Correct.
Did you say yes to that? I'm sorry.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, you didn't dispute it anyway because you said you used it earlier, true?
Correct.
And you had alcohol that you drank with your ex-wife during that visit or what have you, correct?
Correct.
What did it show how much alcohol was in your system? Do you remember the blood test?
I believe it was 0.112.
Uh-huh. And did it mean anything to when you heard that? I mean, .112 is over the legal limit. Are you aware of that?
I am aware of that, yes.
And that's why you're pleading guilty to the operating while intoxicated?
Correct.
Would you say that your drug use is sporadic or regular?
Very sporadic.
But you've used heroin in the past, correct?
A few times before the hearing.
And you used it on that occasion in July.
Correct.
What are the ages of the kids you do have?
I have custody of my 14-year-old daughter and 6-year-old.
14-year-old and 6?
Correct.
And you have custody of both of them?
Yeah, full and legal or whatever. Yes.
Is your spouse? Well, I don't want to get into it. I'm not going to ask that question. Never mind.
Yeah.
Where were the kids when you were there?
They were at my home being watched by my father.
Uh-huh. Well, the 14-year-old's old enough to babysit, isn't she?
She is, but she's 14. So who knows if she wants to go out or not.
Did you say it was your father that was watching them?
Yes.
Do you tell him that you've been using heroin that night when you go to get the kids? I mean, I know you didn't get them because you went to jail. But are you honest with your dad about what's going on? Does he know you got arrested?
He knows, but as soon as I got back, I told him what had happened.
Does he know what you're charged with?
Yes.
Yeah. Does your ex-wife?
Yes, she does too.
Uh-huh. Do the kids, are they her kids too?
They are her kids.
And do they go back and forth and see both parents?
No, they do not.
Okay. I'll go ahead and ask as it relates to this, Mr. Hano, whether you believe the court has complied with the court rule in both the operating while intoxicated as well as the use of the heroin.
I do believe so, Your Honor.
All right. I'm going to accept your plea of guilty, Mr. Boone, on both cases. I think you've been very open and honest. I think you've been very clear about what's happened here. The plea of guilty on the use of heroin and on the OWI, it makes me worried. I don't know you at all. There's got to be more to it if the kids don't see their mother. I don't know if she has some problems. Obviously, there's something going on. I don't know what your issues are. And if, you know, if the state felt that you were using drugs illegally, they'd question whether you should have your kids, to be honest with you. And I want to order a drug and alcohol assessment required by law, but I want to get a feel for what is their recommendation of what they think needs to happen here. I guess if there's anything good about this whole thing, it's that your kids weren't with you. Because if they would have been in the car, it could have been disastrous. Stuff can happen in a split second. I just had a case this morning where I was talking to the man. No alcohol or drugs involved, but he looked away from the road for a split second. And there was a car that had run out of gas and the young guys were pushing it. And he hit him from behind. He almost tore the guy's leg off. And I'm saying, how does that happen? And he said, it was a split second he looked away. And when he looked back, that's what happened. And I said, well, we know it can happen because it does happen. But when alcohol or drugs are in the picture, Mr. Boone, it increases the chances of those things happening. And we're sick about the fatals that occur. So many occur so often. And there's no way you can say you're sorry plenty of times. It doesn't change what occurred. I try to imagine what we'd say to your 14-year-old daughter, what we'd say to your 6-year-old if you were killed in a car accident and you've got heroin in your system and your alcohol is over the legal limit. I mean, how do you explain it? You're supposed to be the dad who's the role model. And I'm not saying this makes you a bad dad. I'm sure you love your kids with everything you've got. But think through this, man, because this is completely unacceptable. So we've got to get the drug and the alcohol assessment, Mr. Hano. Then we'll set up a date for sentencing. I'm sure it's going to be done by Zoom again, so stay in contact. Any questions that you have for me, Mr. Hano?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
So the court will be in contact with you to set that up. Mr. Hano will talk to you about some of the places that we use, and then we'll get back together and talk more about it. Are you with me on that, Mr. Boone?
I am, Your Honor. Thank you, Your Honor.
I'm sure I'm going to be asking you questions like, what were you thinking?
Yeah, I know.
Because that's really what is puzzling to me. What were you thinking, or were you thinking at all? So anyway, I'm glad you were honest with your dad. Okay, that's it. Thanks for your courtesies. You guys can log off.
Thank you, Your
Thank you,
Honor.
Your Honor.
Yep, appreciate it, Mr. Hano. Hey, Mr. LaQuigley, I see you've zoomed in. How are you doing?
I'm well, Judge, and you?
Real good. Do you have Tamara Brinks with you, or is she zooming in?
No, she should be zooming in. I gave her all the information this morning.
Perfect.
She will be requesting her prelim that
Okay.
is held, live next week.
Next week? Okay. Let's see if she's checked in. It was set at 11. See if she's in our Zoom room. Was the number that you had contacted her at, or the number that you're reaching her, just a second. Is that the number that ends in 6596?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. And nothing, you don't see her zooming in right now?
I do not, Your Honor. But as I stated, I did talk to her this morning, and she definitely wants to run her prelim next week.
Yeah, that's fine. Do you say it Tamara or Tamara?
tomorrow, I guess. I said Miss Brinks.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, Ms. Brinks, can you hear me? It's Judge Sara Smolenski calling from the court. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you, but I can't see you.
Well, right. I'm just calling you on the telephone right now because we didn't see that you zoomed in.
Yeah, I've been trying to zoom you in for like an hour.
What do you think the problem is?
I don't know. I'm getting multiple phone calls. I just got a new Cadillac, and it's like trying to give me like 4 different people at once. It's like a switch or something in my car. I have no idea, but I talked to Mr.
LaQuigley. Yep. Let me say this. He's on the Zoom with me right now, and he can hear us. He can hear you.
Okay, good.
We were trying to figure out where you were or how to get you connected. If you're running your exam for next week, you're going to have to figure this out by then.
I will for sure.
Because we're going to need both audio and video with you next week.
I will get that for you for sure.
That's fine. And you can talk to Mr. LaQuigley about it, because you could even be at his office possibly when he's zooming in or whatever. You guys work it out. But let me just say this. You're charged with this offense called breaking and entering a building with the intent to commit a larceny. Now, I don't know anything about it. I don't know what that address is on Kraft. But I need to tell you that when you run your prelim, it's not the trial. It's the prosecutor presenting evidence, trying to show that there was a crime committed and that there's probable cause to believe you committed the offense. It's not a really high burden, but if they can show that even with some contradiction, the case still moves on to circuit court. But any offer to negotiate the case is pretty much off the table. While you have every right to run your preliminary exam, you've got to be really clearly aware that it's not the trial. And when they say breaking and entering, it doesn't have to be like a smashed door or a smashed window. You could turn a knob on a door and walk in, and that's still considered the elements for breaking and entering. Again, I say I don't know what that address is. I don't know anything about it. But there's allegations that there was tools. I'm just looking at the police report right now. I'm not clear on all of it. But that there were some tools or yard equipment or whatever, and that there may be video footage. And I don't know what they have regarding that. But you just want to make sure that you talk with your attorney, Ms. Brinks, at length to make sure 100% you want to take testimony next week. So you've got a week to figure out how to do the Zoom and whether for sure you're going to take testimony. We just put it off till next week, and it's the same time. We call it the preliminary exam. It's at 11 a.m. next Monday. Now, do you feel like you understand what I'm talking about?
I understand completely.
Okay, that's good. Anything else you have, Mr. LaQuigley?
Nothing, Your Honor.
Okay, then your attorney will be in contact with you. If you have any questions, Ms. Brinks, you call him, but figure out this Zoom, because you got to be 100% on and ready to go next week.
Okay, thank you, Ms.
All right, that's okay, good.
Hey,
You bet. Peace to you.
Felix?
Bye-bye. Okay, thank you.
Felix, give me a call. All right. Thank you, Your Honor. Have a nice day.
All right, peace. Thanks so much. See ya, Mr. LaQuigley.